that support us. Like I said, the Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association, we have the Civil Aviation Authority, the Port Department, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the police, the Defense Force, and many other agencies support ESF 12 once it is activated. Secondly, the second role of ESF 12 is to protect the image and reputation of the Bahamas. So the islands of the Bahamas is a brand, just like Apple, Walmart, Nike, Gucci. Therefore, it is absolutely critical that ESF 12 receive full, accurate, and timely information. We require full disclosure. Full disclosure is critical because we live in an age of instant news. That means the news is international the minute it happens. In this day and age, there is no such thing as local news. And so it is so important that we have full disclosure and that we obtain critical information, and then we present that information to our stakeholders and to the media. That is why we strive to ensure maximum transparency, especially in ESF 12, but all of our ESFs. We strive for maximum transparency. And so we stick to the facts and we avoid speculations. And if we stick to the facts and we provide those facts in a timely manner, then that is what will be released into the public sphere. And so that is what we strive on: full disclosure, maximum transparency, and we stick to the facts. The third role is to secure the Ministry of Tourism, Investment, and Aviation properties and facilities by ensuring that all the necessary steps are taken within a specified time frame. In this regard, the Tourism Emergency Coordinating Committee was established to ensure that all of our offices are provided with the necessary tools and equipment to secure electronic devices, secure government documents, and secure other furnishings. The committee is also ensure that all buildings are secure. That's hurricane shelters, secure elevators, turning off power, removing unnecessary signage, and the generators, bringing all of these things down and securing them in the event of a threat. The Tourism Emergency Coordinating Committee is headed by the Director General of Tourism, which today is Mrs. Latia Duncombe. So she serves as our chairperson for the TECC. And she also serves as the spokesperson for ESF 12. So she is the official spokesperson for ESF 12. Remember, one voice, one response, many moving parts. And so she will always be the spokesperson unless she is unavailable, at which time that will fall to me to represent her, unless she has left her deputy in charge. So here at ESF 12, we are a firm advocate of preparation and readiness. And so that is a key factor of ESF 12 also. So prior to an incident or prior to the hurricane season, ESF 12 will ensure there are satisfactory operational modes of communication and that they are maintained and that they are operational. And so we have several different forms of communication between our head office and our satellite offices. We ensure that several different modes of communication are up and functioning at all locations, so as in the event phones go down, mobile devices go down, then we go to two-way radios. We also have satellite phones because, you know, the Bahamas is an archipelago, and so we're spread over many miles of water. And so we have to ensure that we remain in constant contact with our local, regional, and international offices around the world. We also maintain a database of all hotels and guest houses throughout the Bahamas and establish points of contacts to allow for quick access to key personnel. This listing is shared with all of our partners. And so that's already being done. We've already launched our annual hurricane kit. And so every year we produce a hurricane kit, which is shared with all of our stakeholders, our hotels, our guest our homes, our houses, all of they're shared with them in advance. And this manual provides information that will assist our stakeholders. So it provides key points to be remembered. And so if a situation arises, they have the hurricane kit, they can open that. They will be provided with key points. They'll be provided with preparation tips in this manual. They'll be provided with communication plans. They'll also be provided with emergency contact lists. And so in the manual, they have all the numbers and all the agencies that they might need to be in contact with during an incident. Also in the manual, we have what we refer to as our hurricane impact damage assessment form, which is required to be filled out in the event of a crisis. And they provide this information, and the information they provide is on guests that are at their establishment and on the status of those facilities during and after a hurricane. And so we collaborate closely with the Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association. And they too also release, prior to hurricane season, they release the BHTA preparedness plan and the updated insurance readiness and tips. And so they release that to all of their members and stakeholders. Hotels in the Bahamas have well-rehearsed preparedness plans should a hurricane threaten the Bahamas or their region in the Bahamas. So here, during an incident, if such an incident happens, the DRMA, or the National Emergency Operations Center, will be activated. And around that NEOC are other EOCs. Depending on the nature of the threat, one, two, or all of the additional EOCs might be activated. So sometimes all are not. We might have an incident in the Bahamas where we know no visitors are involved or the properties of the tourism industry. So the Tourism Emergency Operations Center will not be activated. And so depending on the incident will depend on this ring that supports the National Emergency Operations Center. But if a serious system were to have impact the Bahamas or is en route to impact the Bahamas, then the entire ring would be activated with the national EOC having lead and all of the other EOCs providing support, assistance, data, and responses as needed. And so we operate under the premise, one voice, one respond, many moving parts. So here, there are two photos. These are actual situation rooms. The one to the left, the Tourism Emergency Operations Center, the TEOC. Both of these photos were taken in 2022 during tropical storm and then Hurricane Nicole. And so on the left-hand side, because we were partially activated, because here you can find the TEOC staff in the room. We monitor the system, the screen straight ahead, and then on the left-hand side, we have a direct feed to the National Emergency Operations Center. And so in the TEOC would be the Director General, myself, members of the Office of the Director General, the Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association, the Ministry of Tourism, Communication Department, Family Island Development, Guest Services, Facilities Department, Aviation Department, and the Cruise Development. And so we all huddle together that we can respond as needed swiftly in the event of a crisis. At the TEOC, we hold at least 2 situation conference calls daily during an incident where we bring in all of our tourist officers, particularly those on the Family Islands, for updates and debriefings or briefings. And then on the right-hand side, we see the National Emergency Operations Center. And so in the back is our military, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. And just in front of them, in the red shirts, is ESF 12 representatives at the NEOC. And they will be in total contact with me and the Director General throughout the course of the day and the course of the situation. So here too, as it relates to Hurricane Nicole, on the left-hand side is the Honorable I. Chester Cooper, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for the Ministry of Tourism, Investment, and Aviation here in the Bahamas. And so during Hurricane Nicole, the Prime Minister was out of country. And so here he is in his capacity as the acting Prime Minister, addressing the nation and giving them an update on the impact of Nicole. Then the following day, I had to address the nation in the absence of the Director General because she was out of country. And so I addressed the nation, giving them a specific update on ESF 12s, cruise ships, airlines, and all of those entities involved in the tourism industry. And so we continually have updates and we continually have national updates. So in preparation for a hurricane, we deploy our military with supplies and personnel, and they go out to sea, and so that they can rapidly respond once the situation would have passed, not necessarily the Bahamas, but would have passed a particular island that would have been impacted. And so the Defense Force is sent out to sea to avoid the hurricane. And as soon as the all clear is given, they will make their way to that island to render assistance. And so we are at ESF 12, we are constantly in collaboration with our stakeholders and our partners. And so here, this is a photo taken after Hurricane Dorian. There we have members of the Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association with other persons. And so we know that Dorian was a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane, the most intense tropical cyclone on record to have hit the Bahamas. But there was such a great outpouring of love and support worldwide. And so, you know, the Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association jumped in, the Caribbean Tourism Organization, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Tourism, and all of those persons who continuously come to the Bahamas and support the islands of the Bahamas responded in great numbers. Here we see the commercial and private airlines coming in, and they worked closely, well, we work closely with Immigration and Customs, the department, to receive the items and distribute them out quickly to the citizens that were in need. And then the cruise lines came in. I mean, even one of the cruise ships became a floating kitchen to lend their support, and so to the port department. And so we have a resilient tourism industry. We bounce back quickly. And so the people of the Bahamas, I mean, it was so heartwarming to see them assisting one another. I mean, it came to the point where we felt like we had more than enough of some things. And I mean, it was a great outpouring of love. Everyone assisting one another in a time of support and rebuilding the Bahamas and our neighborhoods and infrastructure back to a place where the citizens can be proud of themselves and their accomplishments. And so we at ESF 12, we work closely, and that's where our success comes. We work closely with our partners. We work closely with the U.S. Coast Guard through the U.S. Embassy in the Bahamas, and we work very closely with all of those international agencies that lend support. And so, like I said, we respond quickly. We have one voice, one response, many moving parts. We keep everything open. We don't try to hide anything. We make sure that it's open and everyone can see. And I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moss, for your comprehensive discussion on the crucial role of public-private partnerships as a form of tourism resilience in mitigating hurricanes. Your emphasis on the importance of transparency, efficient information dissemination, and the management of lives, properties, and facilities, and more importantly, the sequencing of events is a clear indication that Bahamas has an extremely functional system that should be celebrated, documented, and if possible, duplicated. And that's what we're here to do at the GTR CMC, and that's the purpose of this event here today, to showcase solutions that can work. The point about branding, in such a time where image is important and communicating image is important, is a topic that not many persons speak about, but the difference in terms of persons' awareness or communicating to persons about spaces and places that have been damaged and those that are not damaged is actually equally as important as sharing information about how to operate in the space. And I think the CTO has played an important role in terms of crisis communication, and I think Ms. Amanda Charles has provided us some clarity elsewhere that I thought it was important for us to share here today. So, Ms. Charles, you now have the audience. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you very much to Mr. Moss at the Ministry of Tourism of the Bahamas. Indeed, it is original best practice that we applaud and highly commend. So, good morning, everyone. I extend cordial greetings from the Secretary General and Secretariat of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, really to share some insights as it relates to comprehensive disaster risk management and resilience, and the role really of crisis communications and a strategic approach to ensuring quick response and recovery. And I want to phrase my discussion in the context of CTO's approach to promoting sustainable tourism. In 2020, we undertook an exercise of updating the Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework. And as part of this process, we've defined the future or the vision for Caribbean tourism as one that is sustainable, viable, of high quality, climate smart, resilient, and promotes empowerment and inclusion. So when we think of sustainable tourism, traditionally there are three pillars, really mitigating social, environmental, and economic impacts, at least adverse social, economic, and environmental impacts to optimize benefits for host communities. In the Caribbean context, we add a fourth pillar. So, of course, we want to ensure social and cultural equity, ensure the sector is economically viable, environmentally responsible, but resilience to climate change and hazards is a key criteria. In looking at the impact of disasters on the sector, we see that in 2017, multi-countries were severely impacted by Hurricanes Irma and Maria. 2 years after, the Bahamas, and in particular, some islands of the Bahamas, Abaco, Grand Bahama in particular, also multi-destination impact, incurred millions in losses and damages as a result of Dorian. This year in 2024, almost at the start or very close to the start of the annual hurricane season, we have had Hurricane Beryl, which intensified quite rapidly from a tropical storm to a deadly Category 5. It impacted 10 CTO member countries, ranging from moderate to severe impacts. And the most devastating impacts were to Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where at least 8 of the Grenadine Islands belonging to St. Vincent and 2 of the Grenadine Islands belonging to Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique were severely impacted, and the tourism infrastructure in those destinations took a hard hit. So we see billions of dollars that could support perhaps our marketing efforts, our capacity building efforts as a sector, having to be diverted for disaster risk recovery. And one of the key learnings from the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency is that not every hazard has to lead to a disaster. We face a number of hazards, not only climate-induced hazards such as hurricanes and storms. There are other threats, including we saw last year, or well, a few years ago, St. Vincent had a volcanic eruption. We've had a number of countries, including Haiti, being impacted by earthquakes. And as a result, we live in a geographic space that is very beautiful, has an ambient climate, but we are vulnerable to hazards. And it's therefore impediment on us to ensure there are proper systems for mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Key learnings from past hurricanes specifically: public and private sector collaboration is key at the national level. I was very happy to hear this in the previous presentation. And Mr. Ross also highlighted the need to disseminate accurate and timely information from a central source or a spokesperson on behalf of the impacted destination. At the regional level, CTO and our private sector partner, the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, play a role in supporting impacted countries in collaboration with the regional PR council to support information dissemination. And there is also a sensitive issue. But in 2017, because so many countries were impacted, the general consensus was that the entire Caribbean region was devastated. And we realized that there was need to educate the international media and certainly the travel media of the geography of the region. And so while one or two or more countries may be impacted by an adverse event, in particular, such as a hurricane, there are others who are very much open and very much want to continue receiving visitors. In the context of, for example, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, currently, the Grenadine Islands have been impacted, at least 8 of the Grenadine Islands. Mainland St. Vincent is practically or moderately impacted, and so still in a state of readiness to receive visitors. And how do you really manage the need to support relief and recovery and, you know, donation drives, which is critically needed for impacted countries and territories, but balancing that with the fact that you are still open for tourism, and the very same tourism receipts can contribute to your relief and response, certainly recovery efforts. So that is a critical, sensitive area for consideration. And generally, to reiterate the importance of crisis communications, websites and social media platforms are so critical in disseminating information so that the impacted country can control the narrative. So some key recommendations. I was very heartened by the presentation from Trevor Moss of the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism. And I know that in addition to the Bahamas, Barbados and Jamaica have thriving tourism emergency management committees or tourism emergency coordinating committees. I believe this is what it's called in the Bahamas. This is a regional best practice that we continue to promote. It is also important to develop clear communication protocols and guidelines for visitors' safety and security. I will touch on that in a little bit more. Similarly, building intelligence networks for monitoring and communication. And we see that tourism has evolved. Persons are no longer staying only in traditional accommodation facilities. They are staying in the hinterlands, you know, they're staying in private homes. And as a result, governments now have to grapple with, and the tourism sector, what systems and processes do you put in place to ensure the identification of visitors and supporting their needs during times of crisis. And in that regard, crisis communications plan and strategy linked to the overall visitor management plan is a key recommendation. So I want to touch a little bit more in the context of the role of the public sector and the private sector, specifically having a digital system for communication and outreach to regional and national stakeholders, visitors in country, and accommodation facilities. So in the context of the sharing economy, what systems are in place or registries for accommodation facilities outside of the traditional accommodation sectors, which would be hotels and resorts that are licensed and registered and or are part of the National Hotel and Tourism Association. I want to highlight that in some countries, I've seen an approach to capture visitors' emails and phone numbers upon arrivals. And I think this is a step in the right direction, but it is now that integration or closer collaboration between tourism and the immigration and port authorities to ensure there is a sound system for communication and outreach. Similarly, what is the protocol for the identification, relocation, and/or evacuation of foreign visitors? I supported the rapid needs assessment to both St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada. And in the interviews with the various properties, they had mentioned that, visitors had opted to remain on property because the general consensus was that this was going to be a tropical storm, the impact would not have been so severe, and so the visitors did not necessarily want to interrupt their vacation. And of course, we had a category 4 to 5 hurricane then impacting these particular properties, and a lot of the room stock being devastated. So are there arrangements even among hotels in a particular destination that if one is in a flood prone coastal area that may be exposed, certainly in-house guests can be moved to, a safer location? Or should the government leave it to chance for each individual property to have their own policy as it relates to whether or not visitors remain on property and in the destination when there is a hurricane? And in the context of a hurricane or a tropical storm, we have advance notice. We have an early warning system, including, when it's a watch, when it's a warning. Unlike other events, such as a volcano or maybe even an earthquake, which is kind of immediate. So this is the question for governments to consider, and I believe that can be answered in collaboration with your constituents, the private sector. Certainly for the private sector, staffing issues is a key consideration because employees also have a responsibility to homes and family. And so, it's a risk to lives because tourism is about people, and the importance then of having clear protocols is important. I want to highlight that the sector also plays a key role in providing food, shelter, and supplies as needed. So my observation from previous post-disaster assessments, including in the Bahamas and Dominica, was that, oftentimes the hotel, for example, or resort may be more resilient than the average home of a local community resident. And so I'm very happy in the context of now St. Vincent and Grenada, where hotels are allocating a portion of their room stock to shelter residents. And this, is a key role for, I think, the tourism sector. We may have larger food stocks as well. And then, with the closure of the facility based on the level of damage and impact, we can support the community and recovery efforts. And I want to conclude just highlighting some efforts and initiatives of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, and that is across the disaster continuum to support resilience. So in the area of mitigation, we provide training and capacity building. We have an online disaster risk management course. It is quite comprehensive, and it is available for free for persons from our member countries, our 25 member countries. In terms of tools and resources for preparedness, we publish a quarterly tourism climatic bulletin. At the start of the hurricane season, we also hosted a hurricane preparedness webinar in collaboration with CHDA and the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology. We have an updated multi-hazard risk management guide for the Caribbean tourism sector. Actually, the online course is adapted from the guide. And we recently launched a crisis comms toolkit, and that includes a number of templates to support crisis communications. It includes a social media plan, guides and models for press releases. It really is quite comprehensive. That is available only to our government members currently, and we will be circulating information to provide access. Response, of course, we support via our various channels, mainly in terms of crisis communication, promoting or providing information on impact and recovery. CTO also plays a critical role in coordinating the PR Council, and that is comprised of the PR focal points and the external PR agencies as well of our member countries. And lastly, recovery. We continue to support fundraising efforts, donation drives, and we serve as the lead focal point for the sector as part of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Response Mechanism coordinated by SEDEMA. And this is a snapshot to some of our resources. I would like to thank the GTR CMC for hosting this very timely webinar. And I leave you all with a quote from Elizabeth Riley, the Executive Director of SEDEMA, who regrettably could not be here today, but she said that ultimately recovery should seek to rebuild more inclusive societies and reduce vulnerability to future disasters. I believe we are always in a state of recovery, and preparing sort of for the next critical event that could impact, and having plans, strategies in place can help to alleviate the impact. And so a natural hazard does not always have to result in a devastating disaster. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Charles, for the comprehensive and effective approach of the Caribbean Tourism Organization. It's clear that the emphasis on essential tools such as risk management, crisis communication, public-private partnerships, and the importance of planning. And also, I know you introduced a topic in terms of the role that digital technologies play, which was quite interesting because shortly after, I saw one of the questions that came in did ask about the role that digital technologies can play, and which particular technology would you recommend to help in terms of hurricane mitigation and management. So we can discuss this after, but it's quite commendable. Let's now turn our attention to an entrepreneur, someone who actually operates a business here in the Caribbean, across different countries. And John Biles, you're here today to tell us, how do you do it? How do you navigate the challenges that normally come with a hurricane? Mr. Biles?
Thank you, Prof. Morning, everyone. Hold on one second here. I'm going to just make sure on the share screen. You're seeing my screen?
Yes, we are. We're seeing the screen.
Okay. Not sure why I'm not.
Oh, we're seeing it now.
You're seeing the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just get here. Okay, so I'm as Professor Wallace said, good morning, everyone, again. I I'm hoping to bring, the insight from a entrepreneurial side of actually running the business in the environment. Before I get into that, I want to say that we have a unique scenario in Jamaica where our Minister of Tourism, Dr. Edmund Bartlett, is very much a part and parcel of our what we call our inner team. So many times when there are crises coming or crisis upon us, he is very much a part of setting up, leading the task force, and driving the process. And that is extremely comforting and also helpful in the business of tourism. So I don't need to explain to anybody here about how many hurricanes we're expecting. So this has become a part and parcel of the environment we're in. But I am going to speak a little bit about from an attractions perspective. I know many speak more about the hotel side. And there's, when we talk about attractions, it's not just the traditional theme park. A company like what we operate at Chukka is a nature adventure operation. And while there is potential threat of a hurricane on the physical damage of infrastructure, such as the buildings, there is also trails, landscape, rides, which are very costly, and the bigger cost for our area of the attractions is really the loss of business. Because in many cases we are able to, we tend to be very agile, we tend to be able to set up back and start the operation. But if the business that of tourism feels, and I think Amanda mentioned it earlier, if the marketplace feels that the destination is hurt, it can have a huge effect if people come into the hotels and they feel that there is damage. So it's very, very important that we're continually communicating, once we are back up and running. But that is the largest impact for the attractions generally tends to be the loss of business. I do want to say one other thing. I'm not speaking just for my company or for Jamaica, but I can tell you across the Caribbean, because we've always had a difficulty getting business interruption insurance, and to a large extent, the actual physical infrastructure tends to not be the higher price point like the hotels. In the attractions industry, we have had to be very, very agile and find ways to build, to develop the tours, to allow for changes and to protect as best as we can the environment we're in. That has come out of that lack of insurance, and I believe it has made us stronger as an industry. Hurricane preparedness, you went through a lot of it from the government side, but we as operators, we have our own responsibilities to make the plan. There's a hurricane plan that we have. The builder kit is basically to ensure that the locations that we have all will have what we call the on-property first responders that will protect the space, the livestock, etc. But they must have their kit, and their kit, yes, it includes first aid, but a key is communication. I heard that both from Trevor and Amanda, the importance of communication. We have to be communicating internally, and there must be the food stock, water, etc. on the site, chainsaws, These are just some of what we make sure that each site has. There's usually 2 or 3 minimum people that will be on the site, and there must be an evacuation route to what is a safe room on the site at all times. Of course, the information, they inform the country manager for each of the countries whenever something like this is happening. That's communicated back to corporate and to our CEO. Before the hurricane season, and I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of, you know, we have a little video here just showing what is
It's a movie, fruit ones and Jamaican rum. It's a movie, house movement. I don't want the night to done. Let's go to paradise, be free and have some fun in the water. Feel so nice, celebration in the sun.
Anything you want in, feel good, let's go outside riding.
So giving you a little outline of what the trails are, what the activities are. You can see a lot of it is out in nature. It's going through rivers, it's going along the beach. You know, it's showing nature at its best in whatever country, whatever territory, whatever space within the country. And you know, landscape is a critical component of you know, what we're doing, what we're showcasing. And it's an important part of what we have to focus on. So the hurricane management, you know, the risk assessment and planning to develop a plan. We all have a plan. You know, most operators have one. In fact, I sometimes think it's like muscle memory. Every time we hear there's a hurricane, it's just a automatic rollout of the plan, including areas like we discussed about the evacuation, safe rooms, the roles of the staff. You know, you have staff that will be on site, but you also have the communication back and the way to communicate to staff that once they've secured their home, that they can get to the location as quickly as possible to come and help to get the site ready. We have staff training and drills for what needs to be done, but to be honest with you, I don't think we have had to do a drill. That's just a simulation because we've had so many hurricanes that it's like we keep very fresh with the drills. The warning systems, monitoring when there's a hurricane in the area, it's a communication continually. You know, things like boats have to be moved into the safe harbors. You have zip lines. You have to drop the zip lines themselves because you don't want trees causing a shock load that destroys either the foundation trees or the equipment. So there's pretty much at least a day of or 24 hours where you start the lockdown and you close down your operations. And likewise, coming back out of the hurricane, there's going to be, first of all, the certification of the locations, which only the country manager can certify the locations back open. Once that's done, then you have to remobilize assets back into the site. So, of course, we all know this area, and I don't want to belabor the points, but the communication, how we communicate to the marketplace, the closing off of operations, making sure that guests, you know, don't just show up at the site, especially, I think Amanda mentioned it earlier. Now with the short-term rental, you don't have, you know, just 1 or 2 destination management companies that you speak to. People just show up on your site on the day of the hurricane, like they don't even have an idea that a hurricane is coming. So, you know, you have to make sure that you have the people in place to communicate what's going on. One of the things that I'm just going into a little off script here. one of the things that we did, Amanda, when you mentioned the short-term rental, we had that concern in the middle of Beryl because we know that there's, you know, a multiplicity of listings all around the country. There's Airbnb, Vrbo, all these other short-term rental operators. What we did, because we had communication through the Jamaica Tourist Board, is that we actually had to contact the embassy, US Embassy, to contact the companies to make sure that we were communicating and able to send the communication that we would otherwise have just sent to the hotels or to the destination management companies, so that they could get to the clients that are here on the short-term rentals. It was, you know, one of those things. You just had to be agile. You had to find the best way to get, because there's no real way to contact, you know, these basically over 10,000 short-term rental listings out there. But they need information as well. They need to know where the shelters are. They need to know, you know, what's happening with the closure of the airport and when the airport reopens, etc., etc. So that was how that side of it was handled. You know, of course, you know, attraction operators like ourselves, we have the windows, doors on the offices that you have to batten down. Your critical systems are backed up, and your data is stored safely. And ensure that you have the security in place on property and the first responders with the communication that we discussed earlier. So securing of the property. I mean, this is actually a picture of one of the properties, Ocean Outpost in Sandy Bay, Jamaica. And it just shows you exactly what was there on the day before the hurricane came. All furniture is removed. The tents, the tent canvas is removed. You basically just try to get the operation in such a place that you know, you are as protected as you can be from the storm. So just to tell you, this property in particular was designed to be resilient. By the way, our minister has been talking about resilience from before COVID. So it's, you know, it's a part and parcel of what we do and how we plan. And as I said before, because the attraction industry has always been more exposed, we've had to go above and beyond. So in the construction, you'll notice, simple as this may be, you know, the roofs are designed for the wind to blow right through. That overwater gazebo you see in the back there is designed as well, that if there's any wave action, that the waves come through, despite the fact that there's a double reef system out there. So everything is designed to try and allow the least amount of impact. Whilst you may have, you know, built-in hurricane straps, the zinc is not bolted down. It's left so that it can fly to leave the majority of the building safe. Just to tell you, we don't have any communities close by, so for us it's the best approach with that, so that we can always put the zinc back onto the roof with the least amount of damage to the underlying infrastructure. We described the zip lines. You know, this is an overwater zip line. There's no trees in this area, but there are trees and areas that you go through. Otherwise, that had to have the lines dropped, etc. We also, this is again now because of, you know, what insurance we can get. We take photos before and after and do proper documentation so that we can start the rebuild immediately, while sending all information to the insurers so that we don't have to sit down and wait for insurance if needed. Here we go. I'll just speak quickly. You know, all the vehicles are put into a central area, and secured away from trees and from buildings that could fall, etc. We have straps that are put onto a lot of the structures that we have, offices, etc. All diesel tanks are filled. The generator is prepared with extra fuel in case we are going to need it for an extended period. This is actually the restroom area the day after the hurricane. And I put this here because unfortunately I don't have the picture of the trees that are around. But you can see that in the right photo that there is some trimming that took place of the trees to try and protect the structure. And granted, we did not get the full blow, thank God, but we were, you know, the operation was relatively protected by doing the required trimming of the trees in and around the buildings, and also like the major zip anchors, the trees that were the zip anchors, those were also trimmed to try and not make them too top heavy so that they would tumble. I'm going to give you a little background on some horses here. For those who know, I'm a lover of this particular animal. But with the horses, you turn them out in the middle of a hurricane. You find an area that's open, you have proper fencing, no trees, and you let the horses go into the space. Horses are amazing creatures. And, you know, when the hurricane comes, they group together, they make a big circle, and they just keep turning around in a circle. They put the young ones in the middle, and they share the brunt of the wind. So whenever there is hurricanes, you find like these circles that they make. They become like mud piles. And this is how they handle the hurricane. They find the safest spot on the open ground, and then they just keep turning in a circle. The picture down below is a picture of the horses in the field the day after the hurricane. Down below there where you see them coming up to the car. But, you know, horses, just like nature generally, gives us a lot of examples of resilience. Securing the boats and vessels during the hurricane, it's a matter of moving them to a safe harbor. We have quite a few safe harbors in Jamaica, and I know we have them in Turks. We have, you know, also in Belize where we operate. So, you know, there usually is an area that you can go and safely secure the boats, put in proper strong moorings. But what's critical is that you have a team there, and they have an evacuation plan that if things get in any way unsafe for them, they are to go to a safe room on the land, and they have a very clear evacuation route. So infrastructure, and you probably will all laugh at when I say infrastructure for attractions, because they are, you know, we try to minimize what build we do because we are building in nature, and so it tends to be a lot less than you know, what a hotel facility would be. But I put this picture just to show you, you know, all the roofs, they allow the breeze to go up, and you'll see that they have vents at the top to let out air, which is one of the biggest reasons that roofs fly. You'll see also the wall around the pool, a revetment wall, that was designed and as a requirement of our National Environmental Protection Agency, where you don't have a flat wall, but you have these massive rocks that dissipate the water if it comes in. So it's at an angle. You don't actually see the angle there. But this is all a part of the resilience, is accepting that you are going to have the storms, hurricanes, and other events. In fact, in February this year, we had a westerly high water storm that came in. Not so much a storm as much as just terrible wave action that destroyed many buildings in Montego Bay. You know, and it's important that we are realizing that this is not going to be as much the exception, but we need to be building for it to be the norm. So during the hurricane, key areas of focus, I think we've spoken about this already. Our emergency response team, we had the teams in Jamaica. We have different resorts, and we have attraction sites at different sites. So we had a team in each of the resort areas that were in communication with the team that was on site, and they were the first to respond, to go in, check, make sure everything and everybody's safe, and then to proceed with getting the sites ready again. Recovery after the hurricane. It's, you know, the damage assessment as soon as it's safe, prioritize repairs to critical infrastructure and guest areas. We spoke about insurance, communication, and marketing. You know, we had to be communicating back to the Ministry of Tourism immediately what sites were ready, because I don't remember who said it earlier. I think it might have been Trevor, that you know, it's important that the world knows that your destination is back up. So this was being fed back to Ministry of Tourism and to the minister himself, you know, as to the attraction sites that were back up and ready, as well as the hotels. One thing we've learned very clearly is that a destination is not just the hotels, it's not just the cruise, it's not just the attractions. It's a collective destination. So the communication is seamless between all of the areas. The community collaboration. So we were working closely with the local authorities, emergency services, JPS. You know, we had a task force that included attractions and hotels and the Jamaica Public Service, which was probably the most critical element, that so many other things were disrupted, and we needed to get the power back up as quickly as possible. This, I won't get into it, but it's the all clear procedures. So each country manager is the only person that can declare the locations open. So there's a whole process in dealing with that, and it touches every aspect of the country. So from the offices to the attraction sites, to making sure that we will be able to run, that staff are okay at home, and that we will be able to operate safely for the guests. So before and after. The resilience building, we spoke on that, but it has to be what we, you know, somebody in the industry said to me recently that, you know, the thing about being in the business long enough is that every time there is destruction, we get the opportunity to build it better and stronger. And that's an ongoing practice. You know, it has to be that you do the postmortem right after, you identify the areas of weakness, and you build into the plans what you can do to protect the business. One thing I want to tell you is that, and I mentioned earlier about the double reef system that we have at that one site that I was showing you earlier. Coral restoration is going to be a key, because I'm relying on a double reef system, but some of the reef is dying. So one of the things that we are having to look at now is how do we restore the reef, and we are in discussions about trying to take reef it from other areas and bring over that are seemingly able and more resilient to deal with the climate change, the heat, the other elements that are having an effect, and how can we make sure that the reef that we have is strong and starts to rebuild it. We're able to get it rebuilt as much as we can, both for the beauty of it, but also for the safety of our shoreline. Again, one quick book.
The Tainos call this land Jamaica, meaning the land of wood and water. It is the source in which the name Jamaica was derived. You see, water flows through and around this land in abundance. It nourishes, provides, and connects all life, past, present, and future. Come with us on a magical journey. Let us follow this connection and discover Jamaica.
So, sorry. So, just to close off, I wanted to show, because we in the attractions, we are many times what people are traveling to see. In fact, more and more of our visitors want to see the nature, the culture. They want to eat our food. They want to meet our people. So it is a critical part, and we've seen it before where the attractions are not open. People start to say, why are we coming? So it is a critical component of the destination. But as I close here, I just want to say that, we are Jamaica, we are the Caribbean, but we are a collective industry. It is all in by all the players that make the destination. And we realize that we are just a part of that, and we play our part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Biles, for that practical and experiential presentation. The visuals that you provided really brought to life what tourism resilience looks like in action. And certainly the strategies that you've shared not only highlights the effectiveness of resilience planning, but also serves, or can be said to be, a guide for others in the industry, aiming to enhance their own preparedness. So your approach sets certainly a commendable example about how businesses can thrive even in the face of various challenges. Minister Bartlett is still in his meeting, and as such still has not been able to join us as yet, but we can continue and hope that he does. We're just jumping to the question and answer section, and we have 3 questions so far. I think this is a general question. Well, the first question that came before was to you, Mr. Moss. Persons were asking what software application or platform you used to integrate all of those activities together, if you did, and what that particular application is. I think
Okay,
all right.
sorry about that. I actually didn't realize that we had a different time zone. So I had another meeting. So you could repeat that question.
So they were asking, you were talking essentially about all of the different activities and how they're tied in and sequenced. and they wanted to know if there was one particular software application that you have that manages all of that, and if you do, what is this application?
Okay, so the DRMA has a software. My colleague Vernon Weish normally sits in the National Command Center, and he operates that. And the light of me right now is not coming to mind, but I think it was something that was developed for us.
Okay.
So it's not an off-the-shelf software that was developed for us. And then also with that, when we're talking about technology and all that, let me add that we also are part with the Disaster Aware Pro, which tracks hurricanes, tracks natural disasters. And so we have that tool that has been made available to us. And so it gives us alerts, it gives us history on what has happened in our region. And so if I click on it, it'll tell me about Dorian, it'll tell me about Nicole, it'll give us history on what was impacted, how severe it was, loss of properties, what did it value, if we can have flooding, and it'll give us all of that. And that's the Disaster Pro, the DDC.
Well, thank you very much for that. What I will do, I'll put you in contact with them after. I suspect that it is from an agency that would need this application to duplicate some of the successes that you had as well. The second question I had, and I think this is a general question, what are some of the more reliable sources of information or platforms where tourism businesses can stay updated with the latest practices and innovation in management? I'll do that one maybe for the CTO, Amanda.
Again, can you repeat this? I think I lost you at the end. It broke up a bit.
It's a long question. What are some of the reliable sources of information or platforms where tourism businesses can stay updated with the latest practices and innovations in hurricane management and recovery?
Okay, that is an excellent question, and I would direct the person asking the question to the multi-hazard risk management guide that has been produced by the CTO. Similarly, our partner, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, anything to do with hazards, the CDEMA coordinates and provide timely updates. Finally, the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, they produce quarterly forecasts related to climate and weather drought, droughts during the dry season, cyclones, storms, and they also collaborate with the various Met offices. Of course, for national level information, it is so important to stay abreast of national updates. That will be the most important during times of hazards. I just want to reiterate that.
Okay,
and that would be disseminated by the National Disaster Office or the Met Office.
All right. I may have to, because you went fast. I may have to just ask you to share that in an email or a WhatsApp, and I'll just disseminate it to the persons who registered for the event, because I suspect that I wasn't expecting that the long menu, which is fantastic because it goes to show that there are so many different resources that are there to help. But it would be good if we could centralize the menu in one area or space as a repository that persons can access should in case they want to get additional information. So
So CTO has that online repository via our website. CHTA as well for their private sector counterparts. In the context of Caribbean tourism, for disasters broadly, CDEMA, that is their mandate for the Caribbean.
so you can go online and check the CDEMA website,
Correct.
CTO website, the CHTA website, the GTRCMC website as well, because we do have
Exactly.
of solutions and tools. And of course, we just use the opportunity, since you're speaking, Amanda, to say that, the GTRCMC and the CTO are now working on a short course on tourism resilience as well, which would incorporate some of these solutions. I think this last question here, right, John, you're perhaps the only person who can answer this question. And the question is essentially asking, what's the one critical thing that a business entrepreneur will need to do in order for them to adequately prepare for or manage a hurricane? Just that one critical key ingredient.
Well, that's a difficult one. So,
Or let me change it around. Perhaps the most important thing.
well, the most important thing is to have your plan and execute it.
So plan.
Have that plan and execute it with your team. That's the most important.
That's sound advice, actually. Planning and rehearsing the plan, doing your drills. I think a lot of companies have stopped doing. When I was growing up, we used to have these drills, and I don't see them being practiced on a regular basis. But these drills are important, for you to have an understanding of the process and the flow and the activities and how to refine the responsiveness to the crisis itself. So it's sound advice, planning, and in some instances where it comes to drill. All right, drills. Let me look if there are any other questions. 1 minute.
I will add one other point.
Sure, go ahead.
Any fool can learn by their own mistakes. Smart people learn from others, and there's more than enough experiences with the hurricanes throughout the Caribbean that can help us in incorporating, all the different scenarios into our plans. So it's good for us to have, CTO and to have this type of environment where we are sharing information as to, what can happen, and then, look at ways as best as possible to mitigate.
I've seen. Thank you very much, John. I'm seeing 2 questions here. I'm not entirely sure who can respond to them. And these are questions related to financial support for recovery. Are there any regional support mechanisms for us to be able to access funds to aid in our recovery efforts? Amanda, I'm not John. I don't know if you or Trevor.
I'm all ears.
Oh.
Well, I can begin at the regional level for governments that have signed on to CCREF, the Caribbean Risk and Resilience Infrastructure Facility. Countries that have signed on get I guess can claim, right? And they do get financial support. So for example, I know CCREF would have paid out several millions to St. Vincent and the Grenadines following the volcano. And I saw through a press release recently that 44 million was paid to Grenada based on their claim post-Hurricane Beryl. Jamaica got just over $1 million, as well as St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So I believe it's based on factors such as drawdown, etc. But at the country level, certainly there is a facility, and I believe in the context of development banks as well, they support recovery efforts the CDB and others, again, you would have to be a member country. At the destination level or private sector level, we have the original best practice where some countries provide relief stimulus packages to affected employees and incentives such as concessions, and duty-free concessions and other, tax holidays, etc., to support recovery and rebuilding at the private sector level. So certainly nationally and regionally, there are systems in place. Of course, if the person is a private individual, it would be more so the government, based on whatever funds they have raised through various means, that they then pass on to affected individuals and businesses.
No, thank you very much. I think also, you're saying something, John?
Yeah, I understand you have these government funds, etc. But as an operator, I don't want to feel like I'm in any way looking for charity. And if there was a way for us to, and I just thinking it through right now, we're able to come with a position that the governments take to say, all right, tourism has this benefit to the overall country. We don't need to be asking at that time, anything that you need for rebuild, you get the concessions on. And one other side of it, and I don't know if we're in that space yet that we could do this, but if we could do some sort of a regional, and when I say regional, you could definitely include Florida and all the areas that are hard hit by hurricanes with the devastation. Is there an ability now, and I would even say where we've gotten to a level of jointly looking at what we can do as a wider group to put in some sort of insurance that we can all pay into, that gives the protection, to our counterparts in the areas. As I said, for the attractions, and I'm speaking now in a more narrow sense, the attractions really, it's about the business interruption. It's less about having the agility and the designs to be able to come back up. It's the loss of business when people do not come to the country. And that's not something unique to my business or Jamaica. It is across the industry that is to a large extent exposed to the hurricanes.
Right, no, thank you very much, Mr. Biles. Minister Bartlett has been advocating for some time now about the establishment of a tourism resilience fund, specifically to help and support micro, small, and medium-sized tourism entrepreneurs in small and developing states who may not be able to access the resources that the medium and larger ones can, and the larger ones certainly. And it is certainly an idea that we have been advocating for a while now. And there have been some, to be quite frank, some movements in that regard, but negotiations are still ongoing and conversations are still being had as it relates to creating that fund to support MSMEs, MSMTEs in small and developing states. But it's something that is needed, and clearly I've seen 4 questions being asked about funding and from micro entrepreneurs just in the last 3 minutes alone. So it just goes to show you that there's a high demand for it and something that needs to be addressed.
I just don't want you to limit it to the small and medium.
No, certainly not. Not at all. Right, so it's access to all. All right, now thank you very much, everyone. As we conclude, and thank you very much, panelists, for taking the time out. Unfortunately, Minister Bartlett would have needed to have been here today, but can't. he has meetings, and just to note that Minister did receive an honorary doctorate 3 days ago from University College of the Caribbean here in Jamaica. Great honor, congratulations, Minister. And I hear more to come, but let's wait and see. As we conclude today, I'd like to express my gratitude to the panelists and the participants for their valuable contributions. Today's discussion, for me, and I'm sure for many, has reinforced the importance of collaboration, public-private partnerships, planning, innovation, the use of technology in building resilience towards mitigating, managing, preparing for, and recovering from hurricanes here in the Caribbean. Let's continue this conversation beyond today, implementing what we've learned, sharing our best practices. We can exchange contact details among and between persons. I know, Trevor, that persons have an interest in the software application that you're using, so there's an opportunity there for intervention. Certainly together we can ensure that our beautiful region not only survives, but thrives in the face of future storms. Thank you everyone for your engagement today and your commitment. I'm Lloyd Waller coming from Jamaica. Thanks again, and thanks to the panelists. Have a fantastic day.
You too, and thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.